I think one of the dangers the hobby had was that it could easily turn someone into a somebody overnight.
Yeah, and then fast forward about a year or two, like he got universally banned from the keyboard community.
This is just like a human hedonic treadmill problem, right? As it gets easier to get what you want and you get the things that you want, it's less compelling somehow.
Commerce always kills art.
Lovely afternoon here in downtown Los Angeles. We had the Keeb Life meetup recently, and so have some friends in town. So I thought this would be an occasion to bring together some of my fellow keyboard geriatrics who've been in the hobby for a long time. It's kind of an interesting moment in the world of keyboards, and has changed a lot in ways that are, I think, maybe it's better, but also definitely worse in other ways, and we can talk about that. So I thought we could just sort of talk about you guys a little bit and how you came to the hobby and what made it interesting to you. But first, I suppose I should introduce Shin, who's known as Japanese horror writer in the internet keyboard community. You are a film and TV professional, have done various things in that world, some of which are very fancy and impressive. I was, before this, I was looking up your bio. Apparently you directed a film with Anthony Hopkins and Al Pacino, is that right?
Yes, sir.
You were on the writing staff of a Waking Dead show.
Walking Dead.
Walking Dead, yes.
Fear
This is
the
how much
Walking
I know
Dead,
about the world of horror. Yeah, and so, a very fancy and accomplished fellow in the world of Hollywood things. But as as your username implies, you like to write, or perhaps think of yourself as a writer first. Maybe that's what brought you to keyboards. So we can talk about that. But at any rate, that's Shin. And then, of course, followers of this channel will, of course, know whom I know is Nathan, but is Taeha Types from the Taeha Types channel. And this is my old friend Preston. We can talk about how we met in the realm of keyboards at some point in this discussion, I think. But you started out doing streaming pretty actively in the very early days, and then lost your enthusiasm for that, but are still sort of engaged in and care about the community. I think it'll be interesting to talk about how you lost your enthusiasm and what that experience was like, and maybe how your emotional relationship with the keyboard community has changed. I'm Ryan Norbauer. I run Norbauer & Company, or started it at least, and we make very fancy mechanical keyboards. So I don't know, maybe you guys could talk about that first and perhaps most important question for this discussion, which is why, for all of us, I guess it's been like what, at least maybe like 10 years or something that we've been into keyboards, in some cases longer. That's a lot of staying power for a thing that most people would think is pretty silly and frivolous. There must be something about it that resonates with you at a level that is maybe more personal and emotional than just like, this thing is cool. So I would love to hear from you guys. Well, maybe that was a good place to start the conversation. Like, why care so much? You want to talk about that, Shin?
Sure. I'm a writer, first and foremost, so I spend a lot of time in front of a blank page. When you're sitting in front of a computer screen all the time, you tend to look for things that'll occupy your time, whether it's something that'll distract you or something that'll make your workflow a little better. And I started looking into, I remember like when I was younger, I had like an old IBM keyboard that was very springy, and I went on eBay and I decided to look for one of those, and that was extremely loud and just not that great. And then I started looking around at other smaller, cheaper mechanical keyboards at first, and then that really got me into a rabbit hole where I started thinking about
When was this?
What's that?
When did you start exploring?
Probably like 2016.
Oh, okay.
2015, yeah, around then.
Okay. So when I first met you, you actually were kind of just maybe a year or two into being interested in keyboards.
Probably, yeah.
I still have a picture when I visited your house of you had laid out your entire vast collection
Oh, yes.
of what at the time were extremely rare and sought after keyboards.
Customs with a K.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if it's grown since. You also had like a whole wall of keycaps.
Yes.
And all that. Like,
So
you amassed that pretty quickly.
I dived in really hard,
Yeah.
very quickly. So I started, I got on Reddit like everybody else did, and I started purchasing things that I thought would get me towards that infamous Endgame keyboard. And it just never happened. I just kept going. And it was, I became more of a collector, I would say, because I really enjoyed getting new keyboards in and feeling the vibe and changing the keycaps and trying to imagine what a certain colorway would look like with a certain set of keycaps. So that really got me into just collecting as much as I can. And at the time, I was just swapping keyboards out. And I guess in a very weird way, intellectually, I would convince myself that if I'm going to write action, I'll write with this particular keyboard. If I'm going to do something emotional, I'll do it with this particular keyboard. But really, I was just swapping them out constantly, and it was just a lot of fun.
We have a friend, Jack, who was at Keep Life recently. He's one of our best clients at Norbauer, and he says that he has certain keyboards for certain moods. Like if he wants to write a kind of more conciliatory and friendly email, he has like a soft, friendly keyboard that he switches to. And then if he has like wants a more aggressive stance or something, he has a more clacky, loud one or something like. Do you have that? Do you have
Yes, for
like
sure.
mood keyboards?
Yes. I don't know if you guys remember, there was a keyboard called the Evil Lady, and I customized that with like a blood splatter paint job thing. So whenever I do like horrific scenes, I'll just pull that one out and just try to write with that one. And you know, it's fun to I'm sure everybody that's sitting here likes different keyboards for different things, but it's really fun to think about it in a way where you're like, you know, you start off like it'll change the way that you write something. And, you know, whether it's writing an email or just writing, you know, something creative, it's an interesting way to swap moods, or, you know, even swapping a colorway on your desk can really make all the difference in the world, especially when you're doing nothing but sitting at your desk and staring at a screen.
You don't change your switches though, right? You have like one.
I have one switch.
One switch that you like.
It's the Kale box white.
Right.
That's it.
I don't. So as someone has never been particularly deep in the world of MX switches, that doesn't really mean much to me. But I know that whenever I think there's been some discussion of this because this is like well known among people who are aware of you in the community that that's your preference, and I think some people are like snobbish about that. I don't know why.
I don't think
What's
it's a very
that all about?
popular switch.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't think, and it's a clicky switch. I think I started with like MX Blue, so I liked clicky, and then when that came out, I was like, oh, this is a cool clicky one. And then every time I tried pandas, I tried everything, you know, that were like the cool switch of the moment, and for whatever reason, I always went back, so I just stick with those.
Look, it's always better in life when you have a matter of taste. If you can like something that's cheap and readily available, like
Yes.
that's a thing to aspire to whenever possible.
Yes.
I'm not always good at it, but it's not. Some people think of it as a great personal achievement to have extreme refinement and discernment in taste, but really it's just like in many cases the imposition of self-imposition of suffering. So
Yes.
you know, we have to sort of pick and choose our battles in life. And if you're going to be populating however many keyboards you have with switches, it's better to have one that you can get readily and that actually you just know you reliably like, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. It's not like vintage blacks or anything that's really difficult to get your hands on. It's something that's pretty easy. Yeah.
Cool. Well, so that's we'll get to the trajectory of where we've all gone, but I think in terms of understanding what drew you to it, that makes sense. And I actually, Nathan, I don't know the answer to this question for you. What?
Oh, really?
Like what? Because I became aware of you around the time when you and I were both involved in the Northern California keyboard community, going to meetups. And so I think that probably was like around 2016 or something like that when we first met.
Yeah.
By that time, you were already like a semi-professional keyboard YouTuber and streamer. And I don't know how you came to it before that, actually. So I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. I was studying software engineer in college, and I naively thought that I would be coding for the rest of my life. I mean, I might be, but not for a profession. So at the time in college, I was building my first nice custom PC, and I wanted a buy it once, use it forever kind of keyboard at the time. And I had a friend who was in the hobby who recommended Topra. And it was around the time when Topra sort of had this like elite sort of community around it. It was like, you just don't have refined taste if you don't like Topra. So I was like, without any research, which is very rare for me, I was like, I'll buy this because it's expensive. It seems a little snobbish, and I kind of like it.
Okay. Very good.
And then that's sort of what made me discover the subreddit subsequently, and then I sort of fell down the rabbit hole from there. As for why I'm still into keyboards,
Wait a minute. Sorry, what was the timing there? So
this was college, so this must have been like it was my sophomore year of college, so 2014.
2014. So from like discovering to keyboards to being semi-professional keyboard YouTuber streamer was like 2 years?
I wouldn't say I was. I mean, I started streaming in 2017, but 2019 is when I went full time.
Okay.
So I think
all right.
2017, I wouldn't call myself professional.
I said semi-professional, but yeah, sure.
I was learning how to make it a profession at the time.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So it's pretty rapid falling down of the rabbit.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised to hear that you also discovered the hobby around that time.
Yeah.
Because based on your collection, I sort of always assumed you would have joined like pre-2010, maybe.
No.
Okay, I mean, because you have a really impressive collection of
Thank
some
you.
nice custom Koreans. So
Yeah, you have stuff from what I think of as the early days, because I guess I came to it earlier than you two. You'll have to remind me, Preston, when you tell your story. But I think it was really around like 2009, 2010 when Geek Hack was pretty new that I started to get into it. And at that time, all of the aluminum CNC stuff was all out of Korea. It was all Korean customs. Yeah, and I know that you have a decent number of those sort of legendary early things, which I don't even know if people are still super tuned into.
it is
anymore.
actually, it's
Yeah.
it's sort of making a comeback. A lot of the new kids, they still consider it their grails that
Okay.
are like that become really invested into the hobby.
That makes sense.
Like OTD.
Yeah,
stuff.
like it's people are still looking for it. The prices are still pretty high, I would say. Even like TGR, some of the older TGR keyboards, like they're still being sought after.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I think I interrupted you at some point, and you were about to
Oh,
say
that's fine.
what kept you, or
What kept
after
me?
initially, or maybe the interesting thing would be perhaps the inflection point between, okay, I got this custom keyboard, I kind of like it, to I'm gonna like really start to make my life about this in a significant way.
Yeah, that's a good question. I've actually been thinking about that since your video with Adam Savage went out. I don't know why I like keyboards so much.
Okay.
I just know that I do. But what made me realize this is I started looking into watches as of late. I just bought my first enthusiast mechanical watch. And it's nice, but it doesn't bring me as much joy as like the first couple keyboards that I purchased did. So I'm still trying to figure out what it is about keyboards that I'm still drawn to. But I'm a very like fidgety kind of, I like dexterous activities or challenges. So I think there's a part of that. There's also nostalgia to not quite as the early days of computing as you, but you know, I grew up gaming and sort of grew up with like the online boom of the internet. So there must be some kind of nostalgic element to it too. But yeah, I've been sort of trying to figure out what it is that's still keeping me in the hobby.
For whatever it's worth, it took me a while, I think, to realize what, like, you know, when I first discovered, like I said, around 2010, I think, Geek Hack, and the fact that like there was, because I also had a buckling spring IBM keyboard that I used all through college. It was really loud and noisy, but I liked it because it just had that feel of old computers, right? And I liked having something that was weird and different and all of that. But when I first discovered that Geek Hack existed, and there's like, oh my God, 4 switch types? Like you can so much, you know, and I remember I had to buy a keyboard from a company in the UK just to get like brown switches, because that's how much not a thing this was at the time. But I was just like incredibly, I think I stayed up for like 2 days straight, just, didn't literally go without sleep, but I went like, you know, slept much less than I would have, because I remember waking up early because like I could go back to my keyboard research for those first few days. And I was not aware of any particular reason why I was so excited by this, but I just simply was. And it took me, I think, years of reflecting and thinking about why, especially as I got deeper into it, and also semi-professionally and then professionally, why it all resonated with me so much. And it required a lot of introspection. And the answer that I now give, which is that for me it's connected to nostalgia about excitement for the early days of computing, is something that I had to really think about and reflect on for a while. So sometimes it's not obvious to us why we like the things that we do.
Yeah, like I'm that way with cameras too. I still get excited about like new cameras that come out. I like playing around with it. I think maybe it just is like there's something about the tactile experience. Like you actually use a keyboard. Like a watch, you wear it, but I'm not like I guess some people fidget with it, but it's not quite to the level of like intimacy as like typing for hours on a computer. So maybe there's that element to it. And just now knowing how much I've become more cognizant of like, I type so much. Like just knowing that this keyboard brings me some level of joy and comfort, as opposed to if I was using a lesser nice quality keyboard. Maybe there's a bit of that too, but yeah, I'm trying to figure that out.
One critical distinction between those two things you mentioned, that it's easier to get more excited about and watches, is cameras and keyboards are tools of creation, right? They actually allow you to make something and to express yourself and to build something. They are tools. A watch, I think for many people, is more of a style accessory, and it really doesn't fill any obvious functional purpose, since we all have phones in our pockets that can tell the time. I'm not judging one or the other in any way. Keyboards are a completely ridiculous hobby. I freely volunteer that all the time. But that is, for whatever it's worth, if you're experiencing a different level of excitement, maybe that's connected to it. I don't know. It's like a tool.
Well, like still, I'm very much into keyboards.
I've noticed.
Yeah.
We're all
In
very
case
fortunate.
people weren't aware.
We're very fortunate.
Yeah, some people thought after I take a step back, oh, he's not interested, but I'm still into keyboards.
I mean, you took a step back from your YouTube channel, but you're probably working as much as you ever have in the world of keyboards. I can personally vouch for that.
Yeah.
All right, Preston. Now, time for your story. Why keyboards? How did you get into this? What's that all about? And when?
My online handle is choobies, which is the name I brought into the keyboard space. Similar to Nathan, I got into keyboards through gaming. I had a Cooler Master Quickfire Rapid, and I think I wanted to customize it. I don't know how the idea came to me. And then I found Geek Hack, and there were some people who were gave tutorials about how to spray paint or sand down and spray paint, and I did all that, and I got a set of white blank PBT keycaps.
When was this?
This was around 2013, actually.
Okay.
So I did all that, and I was like, cool, this is awesome. This is Endgame. I'm done. I didn't really know about the rest of the keyboard hobby until a friend asked me about, what's the deal with your cool keyboard? And I was like, oh, you can check out Geek Hack. And that brought me back into the rabbit hole. And then I went to the 2017 Boston meetup. And I still remember my life changed when I saw the retro refrigerator Norba Force that you had donated as a giveaway item. And it was just so beautiful. I was like, I did not know an object, much less a keyboard, could be this beautiful, like that powder coat glossy finish. I'm sure many of the viewers of this channel would know that retro refrigerator is just something of beauty. And then that got me back into the rabbit hole. I started going to meetups. I met you later in the summer of 2018 at KeyCon in Pittsburgh.
So it was my first time in the realm of keyboards of meeting someone who recognized me in public as a keyboard celebrity.
First time, no way.
Yeah, it was pretty great. Preston was such a spaz about it. It was very charming. I just checked into the hotel, was walking out the front door, and somebody's like, "Oh my God, are you Ryan Norbauer?" And this is Preston.
After I worked up the courage.
Right, which was hilarious.
It was my first time meeting a celebrity.
Right. And so then we went out and I think got lunch or something, and became fast friends as a result of that. It's very interesting that I actually didn't know that keyboard of mine was so early on in your formative keyboard story. And so everything that I know of, all of your being really into MX switches and Alps and all the boards that you subsequently did were they came after that?
Yes.
Okay.
That keyboard, the Norba Force housing was the first group I had ever joined.
Okay. Wow.
Yep. It was a big deal. I was like, $400 some? This is absurd. But I made myself do it. It was the deadline was December 31st. And I was like, I just think I need it. I'll figure out this whole Real Force thing later. I think I just ordered a Real Force that day when I got back from the meetup. And then like Nathan, I had similar ideas. I was like, I don't really know what this is about, but it seems a little cool, a little snooty, people talk well of it, but it's a little hipster too, because it's not MX. And I got it, and I was like, this is dope. And then I got your housing, and then we became friends, and that was my beginning into the rabbit hole.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't realize that was the chronology. Or maybe I did once and I've forgotten, something like that. I know we had corresponded first. You would email to ask about something or other.
Yes.
But when we met, I didn't exactly remember that, I think.
I have a similar story. I think I might have told you this, but it was the 2016 or 2017 NorCal meetup at the Nest headquarters.
I remember that one. Yeah.
I think you had just released a retro refrigerator, Nova Force. And that was the first keyboard meetup that I had ever attended. I came with my stock Real Force round one. And then when I saw your aftermarket housing, I was like, wow, this can go to another whole nother level. And I think I even like offered you money on the spot. I was like, can I get that? Because I really like this finish. And you're like, no, sorry. But it wasn't quite as formative as Preston, but like that definitely set me on the journey of Topra housing modding.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't remember that.
And this has all been a long con. Me joining Norbar is to bring back that retro refrigerator finish.
It's still high on our agenda of things for sure.
Yeah.
I know. Even though I have obviously not made keyboards that interface with your favorite switch type, you've bought a few of.
Oh
the
yeah, I think
keyboards
I
that
had a
made in the past.
retro refrigerator at one
Yeah,
point.
and I remember you particularly liking the powder coating finishes.
Yes,
And
for
saying as
sure.
much in the past. Yeah.
Those were next level. I mean, you know, as you amass so many keyboards, and I'm sure all the guys have had this experience, you know, you tend to notice that there are some corners that are cut, and you know, then you realize that the people that don't cut corners, you realize why it's going to be like $400 or it's going to be like 5 or 6. You just see the quality, and it makes you look at the ones that you thought were amazing, and you're like, okay, maybe these aren't that great.
I think, you know, for us, the issue is just like, this was always an entirely recreational thing for me, certainly in the early days. And I just really wanted to make stuff that I thought was cool and good. And I didn't want to ship things that were not good. And so the solution to this typically was we just make more than we have to, and we get rid of the stuff that is not good, right? And it's the issue with, I think if you're more focused on the margins of the activity, it's very easy to just like rationalize shipping things that are half okay, right? And I had that advantage of just starting out early on, not having to care about money too much. But I'm very sympathetic to people who ran other group buys for whom this was like, there was much more percentage of their money and life at stake, you know? But at any rate, for whatever it's worth, the reject rate on powder coating, particularly the retro refrigerator finish, was always extremely high.
What did you do with all the extras? Were they?
Frequently, that was one of the things that was nice about powder coating is you can chemically strip it if you're careful, without damaging the parts. And so you can actually redo it. It's just is very expensive, right? So it's like, may add, you know, up to $100 for a single keyboard just to redo it, right? Because the stripping process is like, has to be done in a very, it's like nasty chemicals, right? And so it's not something I could do in my garage. You have to work with people who do it. And even the powder coating shops don't want to do it. So they send it out to another third party that takes care of it, et cetera. And so that's one way of rehabilitating the parts without throwing them away. But on things like anodizing, sometimes that's just it. You don't get another shot at it. And then you can rehabilitate them through powder coating if you want, which is actually how I got into the powder coating finishes in the first place. I had a bad batch of anodized parts, and I didn't want to throw them away. And so I started looking into powder coating and realized it had all these interesting creative options, because you can do opaque colors. Like there's no way you can do white anodizing, right? Or even solid colors. Anodizing always has a little bit of a metallic quality to it. Right. And so I actually thought it was cool because it gave me all of these additional creative options, and just decided eventually to lean into it rather than it's just a way of reclaiming bad anodized parts. But with our current setup, we want something that more reliably delivers a good finish. So we're looking at other ways of maybe like doing like a urethane spray finish that's custom Pantone color matched to what the retro refrigerator finish looked like. But that is not powder coat. You know, I don't want to get too deep into the arcane points of powder coating, but, or I don't know, maybe I should. But in any case, the issue is that oftentimes people applying powder coating, especially here in the US, don't do it in an environment where the air is completely perfectly purified. So if you go to like a very high-end automotive refinishing shop, or even just any automotive refinishing shop, honestly, they will have completely clean air. It's like a clean room where they filter air on the intake and what they also blow outside. Powder coating shops don't filter air on the intake. And so there can be these little particulates in the air that just land on the surface. And especially if you have a shiny, glossy surface will be extremely obvious and look bad in a way that I think makes it a part I'm not willing to ship. And so we need to find some way of achieving that, but with a process that is much cleaner. There are also other issues with just the powder coat itself. It can do this sort of like orange peel thing and all sorts of, it's not designed for high cosmetic parts where you're going to be looking at them up close. It's like for office furniture, and kind of more industrial things like that. And so it's honestly a bad candidate for the kind of high-end products that we make and the cosmetic expectations that go with that. But the actual end result looked really cool. So we're trying to find ways of simulating that. But it's an ongoing process. Anyway, sorry, that was a bit of a digression. You were telling us about your experience with the retro refrigerator keyboard leading you into keyboards, and then your that sending you down the rabbit hole. And then you also became much more involved in the online keyboard community and streaming and stuff like that. How did that transition occur?
So I started going to keyboard meetups, meeting like-minded keyboarders. I think what I really liked about the hobby was the idea of the keyboard was kind of this thing that we created. It was one of my first ways that I found myself creatively employing like subjective preference and self-expression in something, like, picking a key set, picking the board. It's like so many choices. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to think about what colors I like and like matching stuff. And it was a really good learning sort of experience for me. It helped me become more of a person in a lot of ways. Because there was no one right answer, And when Nathan was talking about watches and versus keyboards, I had a similar feeling and thought where like there's that personal feeling that you chose it yourself. You had input on it. You may have even put it together, and there's that connection that comes from that. And I love meetups for how you go and you get to talk to other people about how and why they built the board the way they did. Why they have different boards, or why their boards are all the same, or they only use one type of switch, or whatever it is. There's no right or wrong answer. And I really enjoy how you can see a little bit of what people are like and their affections and affinities in life through how they use their keyboards, all the different layouts and sizes of keyboards and stuff. And that somehow led me to start streaming. I really liked the idea of meeting with other like-minded people and creating a...
Sorry, we should probably explain, because not everyone who's watching this maybe actually even understands the concept of like what keyboard streaming, what is that? Like, let's it's not self-evident, so maybe you could explain.
Shoot, that's true.
I mean, we have the expert here to explain that. You want to explain how that's a thing and what it is?
You've probably been asked this question way more, so I'll defer to you.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say that I started keyboard streaming. There were definitely others before me, but I guess I definitely helped sort of make that trajectory shoot up, especially during COVID. I just got lucky. Honestly, the timeline was just perfect for me. But keyboard streaming...
What is it?
Yeah,
right,
what is it? It's just a live stream of someone building a keyboard.
Typically on Twitch.
We stream through Twitch.
On Twitch,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yep.
I remember when you first started your channel.
Oh, you did?
I still have the founder's badge. Yeah.
Oh, you're a founder? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, people just come in and chat, and you just hang out with whoever's building the keyboard. I like to think of it more as the process of building the keyboard is more just eye candy than anything, depending on where you are in your keyboard journey, of course. If you're new, it's going to be very novel and you're going to be asking a lot of questions. But if you're a veteran or you've been in the hobby for a while, it's just more so something visual ASMR, I guess, to just have in the background and hang out.
Especially with the nice cool jazz you used to play in the background.
That's right, yeah. Jazz or lo-fi.
Yeah.
A lot of these streams are like build streams. So many keyboards come in a kit, which is like you might need to do soldering or putting the switches in the hot swap and doing the stabilizers. Or some people just want to open up and mod it. So it's a lot of like little handiwork that you can do with a close-up camera, and people just like to hang out and be like, what are you doing? Why did you pick that? And it creates that space for conversation.
Or you can even just focus on like a particular process. Like there's lube streams as well, where someone's just for 3 hours looping switches on stream while talking. Or there's even been artisan makers who cast resin live on stream as well. So just anything really. Twitch started off as this gaming oriented streaming platform, but they do have other genres of live streams now.
Yeah, I was going to say this probably has something to do with the sort of intimate connection between keyboards and the gaming world. That it is what became like an obvious thing for people in keyboards to do because they were already had like one foot in the gaming world and were immersed in online sort of, Twitch and Discord discussion culture. That it probably wouldn't have been as obvious for watch people or car enthusiasts or whatever to make a Twitch stream, but it's probably because there's so much overlap between gaming and keyboards.
Also, just even like 6-7 years ago, there really was no other platform to live stream other than Twitch. Like
Okay, that's
YouTube
interesting,
streaming
'cause
was
YouTube
not a
didn't make-
thing.
yeah.
Social media wasn't really big on live streams. So, like even when I joined, all the keyboard content creators were mostly on Twitch. So, I think we just kind of never left.
You probably didn't imagine when you set out doing it that this would be like a way to earn a living, I presume.
No, definitely
It was
not.
Just like just for fun.
I had no intention, and it just kind of organically happened.
Yeah.
For you two guys, do you remember what your first board was that you built on stream?
Oh, on stream.
'Cause it
On
must-
stream?
Yeah,
No.
yeah. You don't remember, huh?
No.
Because it must have been worthwhile, right? It wasn't like a bad board, right?
You'd be surprised.
I could not tell
I mean,
you,
what did we know back
actually.
then, right?
I remember my first board that like I ever built, but live streamed, I actually have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can look back on my channel; it's up there. So
You have VODs from before you got partner?
Mhm.
Way back. Okay.
I have most of my streams up on YouTube.
Nice.
The idea of doing something live in front of random people on the internet seems like it would be stressful to me. To what extent was that part of your experience?
What would you find stressful?
Well,
What comes to mind?
so I try never to look at comments on the internet or like Reddit or anything because I think it's this enormous selection bias of human. The sort of person who would type something into a comment box on the internet is not necessarily representative of average people. But if you look at the internet, it gives you the impression that this is humanity, right? And this is what everyone thinks about things. And I don't think it's necessarily a favorable filter. I think as YouTube comments were always the greatest example of this until they changed their algorithms, and I think they just tend to downrank negativity now, which is great. But that also is a kind of selection bias of its own. And so I just would say that because of the way in which people are sort of empowered by semi-anonymity, they're just kind of like jerks on the internet a lot. And the idea of like being live and exposed to people criticizing or saying things live on the internet seems like it would be annoying or stressful while you're also trying to do a task and like give people a good impression of you as a person and all of that. It seems like actually a lot of pressure.
I found, in terms of stress, it was more so, am I going to mess up on camera?
Exactly, yeah.
Certainly
all
in
of that.
my early days of streaming, I've dropped my fair share of like client keyboards that I was building for others and, damaged some parts live on stream. And that's just something you have to get over, I think, just the nature of having an audience and knowing that it's live and you can't edit it out. And then, of course, the social aspect of streaming, it's different for every person. But for me, it was always more so because there were more than a couple times where like I dropped something or damaged something. That was my stress part.
Okay.
Yeah. Or like if I had received something and the PCB didn't work, for example, like before I knew like how to like, jump pads and all that, that was another source of stress. Like, is the stream over? Like, what do I do now that I can't build this keyboard?
It probably just makes for an entertaining kind of turn
that's
of
true,
events.
yeah.
If you view your like business goals of a stream as being building the client board and also entertaining your audience, you you lose on one side, but you gain on the other, maybe.
Arguably you're losing on a very critical side though.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. It's yeah. I think you've always been particularly resilient and about like trolls on the internet. I've sort of watched you interact with them in the past, and you're kind of just like very unfazed by it. And I think maybe a special ability that you have that other people don't have as much. If I had to guess, Preston would have it less. I actually remember the only thing you posted on YouTube, one of your streams, was a really long conversation you and I had.
Yeah, you and me.
And the first comment was just some jerk on the internet saying something rude about it.
Yeah.
And you were like, I remember you calling me in extreme distress.
Yeah, the gist of the comment was, I was just streaming. I had like 2,000 followers or whatever, which is essentially an internet nobody. But I wasn't, looking for growth or whatever. I was just like hanging out with friends and stuff. And so I posted my VOD where I had Ryan on webcam, and we did this occasionally where we would just call and just talk. And I guess people like to listen to that.
Particularly during COVID, because everybody was just stuck at home. And so we would just have really long conversations. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, we're good friends and everyone knows that. So, but then when I put it on YouTube, this VOD, this commenter was like, what is Ryan like doing on the stream of this nobody? Like it's not worth his time or all this stupid stuff. And I was like, oh my God, like my heart. And yeah, I don't remember exactly. It was a few years back. But you can pick up from this point. What was it like when I called you?
I was surprised by how in distress you were. Like I also am not like, there's a spectrum of not giving a shit about what people say on the internet, and I'm somewhere in between the two of you, I think. So I'm like certainly sympathetic to it, but also I was surprised that anyone could care about such an obviously like self-invalidating comment. Like, why would a person just be so rude? Like, and if they are, why would you care what they think? But yeah, I felt bad felt bad for you on that.
And then I was like, that was actually the first YouTube comment I've ever received, ever. And you're like, okay, that provides a little more context.
You get used to it after a while.
I think actually we have two extreme cases. It can go both ways depending on your community that you foster, I guess. But personally, I found it much easier when you have a larger audience.
Okay.
Because the trolls sort of get buried amongst the other positivity.
Sure.
Whereas in like Preston's case, if you're like streaming to, like, let's say 50 viewers, like that vocal minority feels a lot bigger.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But I'm also curious for Shin, like you've worked on some, very popular mainstream media. Like, do you find it harder when your thing is viewed by more people? Or
yeah.
Okay.
You just, you're never going to please everybody,
Right,
and
yeah.
it's really difficult to read comments. But you do, like as soon as you do something, anything creative, you just go right to the comments and you tell people you don't, but you do. Everybody does, and it's they after a while they just kind of whatever bad comments you learn to weather them and you learn to let them bounce off you. But yeah, it's like Ryan says, it feels in the moment like this is what people actually think, but it's really just a small microcosm of people that are a vocal minority. But what's interesting to me when we're talking about your streams, I've watched both of your streams before, and it's kind of like a band that like is performing and they're performing their music, and then they have these interstitials where they just talk to the audience. Like I think that would be stressful for me. Like you guys are just kind of talking about like lubes, or you talking about like Band-Aid mods, whatever you would talk about, but you would fill the time with other stories, and I just found that really fascinating. You guys are both must be a natural with that kind of stuff, because you feel comfortable enough to just keep talking, and that's hard for a lot of people.
I think that's actually one of the things that drives people who are probably successful at it and build an audience, or certainly an enthusiastic audience, is people who can bring a little bit of their own personality into it in addition to just the actual technical side of it. And I would say both of you guys definitely did that in your ways. Yeah.
It's also somewhat of an interesting double-edged sword, because if you spend the majority of your day streaming, you have no time for anything else.
Right.
But you can't really have stories to share on stream unless you live a life outside of streaming.
It's like being a
So it's
writer,
very
actually,
interesting trying
kind
to
of in many
juggle that,
ways. Writers complain about this oftentimes, like you have to live a life to have something to write about.
Right.
And if you spend all your time writing.
Yeah,
not
so
doing
that's,
that,
that was an interesting thing.
So you continued for quite some time,
Mm-hmm.
and you, Preston, stopped after a while. What led to your disillusionment and disenchantment?
Yeah, so I streamed for about 3 years, a few times a week. For context, I grew up, I would say, pretty sheltered in a very religious, like Christian environment. And then joining mechanical keyboards kind of coincided with basically my first foray into the real world, as I like to think about it, the secular world of just how normal people actually are.
Or just people who are thought a little differently from you and all of that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And streaming was kind of a way of, let me put myself out there and kind of just see what people like, kind of connect with people wherever they want to meet me, kind of thing. And then at some point around 2021 or something, I forget the exact dates, there was this guy who came into my stream, and how do I articulate this? He liked to go around to like all of the keyboard streamers, and it was kind of a weird vibe and a weird energy. But people had very different experiences with him. For me, he initially came on with this sort of like, oh, like, I want to help you kind of sense. And up until this point in my life, this is going to sound a little ridiculous, but I had never understood encountered the concept of someone being confidently incorrect. It was like, if someone was confident and was articulate, I was like, they must be right. What they're saying must simply be truth. Because in my life, up until that point, mind you, I was 28 years old, that had always been the case, due to kind of being sheltered and just honestly having a really good support system and community around me. So when this person was talking to me, it started off rather benign, kind of like, hey, I see what you're doing. Like, I kind of like it, but, you need a bit more like drive, or you got to monetize it. It was much more of like he was an older gentleman, kind of a boomer mindset, if you will, of like, if you're not making money, it's not, or seeing some number go up, like becoming Twitch partner or getting a certain number of followers or whatever, it's not worth it or worthwhile. And then I was just kind of listening to him because I was like, I'm used to, if someone has something to say, I want to respect what they have to say, listen to it. And then like he would be DMing me like in Discord and kind of just constantly saying all this stuff, this kind of mentality. And I was like, yeah, I'm just kind of vibing. Like, I don't think I really care about making a business. It's very expressly not that. And instead of him being like, oh, okay, that's fine, he was like very into like, began berating me and like kind of undermining absolutely almost everything I did. And in chat, like he would be the same way.
So when you say in chat, you mean like in the public chat that other people can see?
of the live stream.
Yeah.
And then I think it wasn't just me, but various people in the streamers in the keyboard community who interacted with him. I think we all just kind of didn't quite know what to do. Like it was just a very weird situation. And then other streamers like Nathan, I think you guys had fairly benign engagements with him. So I was like, is it just all in my head? Like, and then I just kind of try to put off that weird feeling. Now looking back, I was like, oh yeah, that just really, really, really sucked. But I just like naively put up with it. Through this whole experience, I learned, the confidently incorrect thing is a thing. I learned how to have like personal, emotional boundaries. And it was a big growing experience. But it just resulted in me feeling really anxious about streaming, as you can imagine. When I was like, I want to stream, I want to connect with my friends and the hobby. But then I was like, that voice was always there. Like, is that guy going to show up? Is he going to like disapprove or whatever? And I just felt like really stuck in that like vortex of feeling bad, but also sort of logically kind of understanding or following along what he was saying, even though I didn't necessarily agree or care about it. Yeah, and then fast forward about a year or two, like he got universally banned from the keyboard community when it kind of came out how terrible of a person he was. But I guess at that point I had lost my enthusiasm for streaming, and it just wasn't really the same anymore after that. Yeah.
I think that sort of parallels a theme that has run through the keyboard community over the past decade or so, which is the sort of ambiguity between this being a purely recreational, purely for fun thing, and the fact that some people are inevitably led to the ambition of like making a name for themselves in the community and or turning it into a business. And I think that's actually, certainly you're not the only person to experience that. Certainly not the only streamer to have people be like, so why are you doing this? Why, like, why aren't your numbers better? Why aren't you, like turning this into a thing? I don't know, maybe you guys have also, you certainly, like, you went through a period, Nathan, on your channel of like covering all the angst and drama in the keyboard world. And I think a lot of that arose out of people who really should have just kept it as a hobby and really had the ambition to build something big out of it for whatever reason, and then realized that they had taken on more logistical business or financial obligations than they were really prepared to do, stuff like that. That seems to have been a major theme. I don't really have a stance on it or anything, but it's something that it's a pattern that has happened over the past few years, I think.
I think I don't know if it's as true anymore now that the hobby has matured a bit, but when the hobby was still much more niche and underground, I guess, I think one of the dangers the hobby had was that it could easily turn someone into a somebody overnight.
Yeah, sure.
Like I guess I'm one of the examples. Like, no one knew who I was, and then suddenly overnight, like, a lot of the internet communities somehow knew who I was.
Yeah, I remember going to cafes with you just randomly. People were like, "Hey, are you the guy from the keyboard guy from the internet?"
But like even people who were finding success in much smaller scales, like there was just like this passionate community that, like, the moment someone did something cool or interesting, they just blew up overnight within the community. And I think that just gave people maybe like too much confidence in some cases, or arrogance.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people just don't know how to deal with like that sudden spike in attention and like fame, I guess.
And the
However
expectations
small
that come with it, right?
Yeah, right.
The feeling that you need to like do something of great significance or whatever to measure up to it.
Yeah. Or like the early day vendors who, had one successful group buy and suddenly they want to manage 10.
Right.
Without realizing or having any sort of like money sense or business sense.
Yeah. So I don't know, Shin, how have you continued to be as involved in following these discussions and
Not really, but
community stuff? Surely you're aware of what Nathan's talking about, what's happened.
Yes,
and all
for
that,
sure. And then I also dipped one toe out for kind of the same reason that you did. It wasn't the way I interpreted your story was this guy, however toxic he was really just pushing you to make money. And as soon as you started saying that, I'm like, God, commerce always kills art. It just does. And that's kind of, I went, as a collector, I just came into this hobby loving keyboards and just having fun, talking to new people that I've never talked to before, worldwide. I mean, I would make friends in China or make a buddy in the Philippines, and we'd all have something in common to talk about. But then as some group buys went sideways, I realized that, a lot of these group buys that were put together were done by kids. And then, I realized that I'm like, oh God, some of these, there was a string of ones that went sideways. And then I think the last one that went sideways for me was the Moon. Remember that keyboard?
Yep, Moon TKL.
Yeah, and I loved the first one. And I sold my first one because I was like, I can't wait for the second one. And then it just never happened. And this was an experienced group buy runner that just, for whatever reason, didn't deliver. And I was like, there's no regulation. So that kind of just killed the commerce, kind of killed the art for me in that moment. And I just kind of took a step back. So
when was that?
Probably like 2021, 22, somewhere around there. Maybe a little later, 2023.
One of the most rocky times for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I think it was, there's obviously toxicity in the way you dealt with this guy, and then in the community in general, but then also in group buys, that really just started killing me because I was like, everybody is so smart in this community. They can't figure out a way to like Geek Hack should be like, we're going to ensure group buys happen in a certain way. I mean, there was no regulation, and that really just, it just made me say, okay, I'm just going to buy keyboard secondhand off the used market because at least I know I'll get it in my hand, you know?
I think something that makes that a little extra tough, another layer on top of it, was that we had so many reputable designers and group by runners, you know, like Yuxi of TGR. Like I remember back in the day being able to just sign up for a TGR group buy. It's like, do you want this board? If yes, fill out this Google form. And then you send them like some PayPal payment after submitting your Google form. And then I was like, is this how we get this board? And then everyone's like, yeah. Like, and I'm like, great. And then like you get the board. And it's just like, it was such a high trust kind of environment,
Yeah.
you know, and it felt really nice. It's like, oh, wow, like we all looking out for each other. Like we're all in this together, you know, like we can DM the vendor, the group buy runner, like that kind of closeness, that grassroots feeling, you know, was really nice.
Yeah. And like some of the earlier group buys, they would actually post the responses, not like revealing like addresses and whatnot, but like you can see this user purchased this configuration, so that you can sort of refer if you needed to trade something after you received it. Like, oh, I don't like this. Like this person got the thing that I like. Can we maybe trade? So that was different times.
Very open.
Yeah.
That's another interesting thing that I've been thinking about as a way of sort of thinking about and framing this discussion is like that surely as these things have changed over the years, the subjective vibe of participating in keyboards has changed. Certainly, like if I think back to that Nest meetup that you and I were at in the Bay Area, and I even went to a few before that. Like I remember the first Bay Area keyboard meetup I went to, I think was it maybe Facebook or actually
Google, I think. Or maybe it was Facebook.
that might have been before me, but there was a keyboard company in the Bay Area that made like those custom printed keycaps. Do you remember? You could order like one printed keycap. I can't remember the name of it.
Signature
Not
plastic?
Signature Plastics.
Okay.
No. They made like consumer keyboards, but you could order individual like inkjet printed keycaps from them. At any rate, they had a meetup, but these were like, I don't know, 40 people or something. And then you go to KeyBlife for the Seattle meetups at their height. Like they're these enormous things with like sponsors and presenters and a whole thing. Obviously that changes the experience in ways that are good and bad. How would you guys like each subjectively characterize how that has changed for you? Did you like it better in the early days? Was it more fun and exciting? Were the frustrations like, obviously it's so much easier now to get what you want, but this is just like a human hedonic treadmill problem, right? Like as it gets easier to get what you want and you get the things that you want, it's less compelling somehow.
Sure.
And that's certainly my experience with basically everything I've ever done in life. Like when it was at its worst, I was most like emotionally connected and excited about it. I don't know. Does any of that resonate with you guys?
It felt more hipster.
Sure.
That definitely appealed to me a little bit.
That's
And
maybe
then-
a less charitable way of thinking about it, but sure. Yeah.
I like hipster. And also I think back in the day when you acquired keyboard knowledge for yourself of how to loop something or how to, before you made videos on all these things, like it kind of felt like earned more in a way, or like, and
Secret
people were
knowledge.
like, yeah, how do you do that? And then if it wasn't gatekeepy, which was really cool. It was like people had this knowledge of how to do these things. Hey, try this out. And then sharing it just happened very organically because there wasn't like, not everyone went on Geekhack or posted on Reddit about these techniques that they discovered and stuff. Just a layer I wanted to add.
I remember like, I don't build keyboards. So I've never built a keyboard before. I don't know how to solder.
So to be clear, that means you hire people to do
I
it for
hire
you.
people to do it. So I just wanted the keyboards.
Right.
So I remember like first getting into the hobby and like you guys just loving, just the aesthetic of getting a new keyboard, but the barrier to entry was really high and it was really kind of protected more back then. And I don't know if it's good or bad, but now you can get complete keyboards from reputable places like OmniType, Novel Keys, whatever, Canon Keys. They have stuff that's in stock that you can buy that are kind of ready to go. And that I think is great, just because it's back then it was really difficult to try to get like little pieces here and there without understanding how to build myself. I would have to like get all these little parts and try to get stabilizers from one company, keycaps from another, switches from another, and it was a mishmash of things, and it was really difficult. So I'm glad that the hobby has advanced a bit in that direction, that the barrier to entry is a little bit easier.
Is that why? So one of the things you're sort of known for in this community, especially in the early days, is you were very supportive of various keyboard streamers. You would like pop into people's streams, drop money, and then go away. Were you just trying to like
Never chatted.
Never chatted. Yeah.
Were you just trying to like foster a community of people that you could ask to build stuff for you, or
I
what?
just when I realized, I think it was maybe an interview you did a long time ago where you had said, and I'm not going to remember the amount, but you had said something like, "Oh, this community is only about 300,000 people worldwide," and I don't remember what the exact number was, but when I thought of that, I was like, "This is just in a weird esoteric way." I thought like this deserves to be a much bigger community. So I've always wanted to like encourage people, especially like everyone from an artisan maker to every element of this keyboard hobby, that if I can foster and encourage people to join, I will. So, like.
Well, for better or worse, that happened. Maybe it was just the money you dropped in the streams that made
Maybe. I doubt it, but I would give discounts to younger kids that were trying to get in the hobby, stuff like that. It's just, I loved it so much that I wanted people to succeed, and I still do. So, it was something that was important to me, just because it was small enough back then, and everybody was cool. Everybody was really cool. There was a few bad eggs, and of course there's a few bad commenters and a few toxic people, but for the most part, everybody was cool, and everybody's really smart. And, I'm an adult, and I'm much older than you guys, and I remember I became buddies with, his Reddit name was Not Zesty Salsa, and he came up from San Diego to deliver a keyboard that we both got on a group buy, and my wife was like, "He's in high school," and I'm like, "Yeah, he is." And we just, we had coffee, we talked about keyboards, and it was great to have that kind of a connection with somebody else that loved a particular thing. I'm sure a lot of other hobbies are the same way, but it was cool to be with like-minded people that are just, I would never meet otherwise, especially professionally, So.
Absolutely. I've always said that there's, compared to other hobbies I've been involved in, the sort of net positivity of the keyboard community, even at its current very large, scale, is much better than almost anything else I've encountered. But I've always kept somewhat of an arm's length relationship with the keyboard world for various reasons, mainly because I've mostly been into Topra stuff, and a lot of it has just felt not directly relevant to me, but also it's just like, even in the, by 2016, it was overwhelming, like constant Discord conversations and all the different forums and everything. It just like, I just wanted to make cool keyboards, and being too involved in that chatter felt overwhelming to me. So I've never actually been very deep in it. You, Nathan, probably of the four of us are the most qualified to comment on the vibe shift that's occurred over the years. What's your take on this?
I definitely agree with some of what Shin said. Like, having accessibility now, I think it's huge, and it's certainly helping newcomers dip their feet much quicker and more accessibly. For me, what I find missing lately is there's not as much of a high with like chasing a product that you like in this space anymore. In the early days, yes, it was a little, not gatekeeping, but like things were artificially scarce because it was run by individuals.
They were just naturally scarce, not artificially
which,
scarce.
I'm not saying is a bad thing, but some people view that as, oh, you're gatekeeping quantity and whatnot, whatever. And like, if you missed a group buy, it might not come back, or it might come back in like 5 years. You never knew. But nowadays,
for me, that's different than like, because I think for some people, gatekeeping is almost like a moral stance. Yeah. It's like, this is better, and if you like some other thing, like you're a bad person, right? And I think that has relatively been pretty low in the keyboard community, but it is certainly the case that doesn't necessarily mean that, especially early on, that you could just get whatever you wanted.
Yeah, but nowadays, you miss a group buy, you just wait a week and some similar version comes out most likely, especially if it's like a flavor of the month design, language, or colors or whatnot. And the accessibility is great, but I think that also makes sort of the fun grassroots aspect of the hobby not there anymore.
It's less exciting, I think, just in general when you can have anything at any time. Right? Doesn't necessarily mean that it's net bad, but it's less like emotionally compelling to engage with it.
But I think that also just might stem from vendors just putting out too many products, perhaps, without putting much thought behind how much products they're putting out. Like, there's so many keycap sets now every month. Like, I'm also wondering how these vendors expect their customers to keep up with the sheer quantity of products they're constantly releasing, without like much variation in performance or something that's actually meaningful that would warrant customers to come back. So I do wish it's not necessarily that there's too much accessibility. It might also just stem from just with how many people are contributing now. You're inevitably going to get some things that may be a little bit sloppy, but yeah, for me at least, that sort of chase has been a little bit missing as of late.
I think a really important background event here for everything that's occurred recently really was COVID, right? And particularly, obviously, not per se the virus itself, but its effects on how people worked, right? There was just this massive influx of interest in working from home and optimizing your office setups that caused an enormous explosion of interest in high-end keyboards around 2020, I guess it would have been, and lasted for a couple of years, I feel. And that had some very significant effects. Some of them may be temporary on particularly the business and economics around keyboards. I think some people perceived a kind of gold rush there, and it caused a lot of people to want to try to get in on it as a business. And as a result, we ended up with this enormous glut of people doing very similar things. And probably, especially as interest in that fell off, as people returned to work and or just they weren't people who were brought to the hobby who were never probably going to be that compelled by it, just got bored and moved on to something else, then all of that extra interest and commerce around it kind of went off of a cliff. And so now we have a lot of these kind of zombie companies and brands that are just making way too much stuff still. A lot of them have, for better or worse, also died off. But that's probably the most, we haven't talked about it directly, but surely is the most significant event for impacting the community that's happened over the past few years, right?
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe there was a thrill to like signing up for a Google form from somebody you never knew, PayPaling them hundreds of dollars and hoping to receive something. So I don't know, maybe all of us are a little into that thrill. Yeah.
It's what we came in with for sure. I wonder what it would be like to hear from the perspective of someone who got into the hobby around like 21, 22, 23, you know.
Yeah.
When I go to meetups now, I feel like it seems like everyone is very happy in that I don't hear much of like, oh, you got that? Like, I couldn't get it. Like, you know, like, help me get one. It's like, it seems everyone just gets what they want. There's so many things out there that everyone can have something that they like, which I'm very happy to see.
But I think there was a time where you could flash on screen a colorway and we would know exactly what GMK set that was.
Right.
And that's changed now, because now I can, when I pop onto Reddit and stuff, I'm like, this new set looks exactly like this old set that looked like another set before it, and now it's just there's like they're just kind of making too many keycaps. So keycaps to me, I used to love keycaps, but it's gotten way less special, and maybe because they're cheaper now, and there's good clones out there. It's there was a time when it was just GMK was the only company that could make this particular quality ABS keycap in these colorways that were really reliable. And now, I don't know. I think there's many more.
I think the thing that made it exciting in those earlier days is not so much that it was per se hard to get stuff, but it was for me, like, part of the magic of the internet ever since I started engaging with it very early on when I was young, is finding something that you're really excited about and like the one other person on the planet or 10 other people who care about that, and knowing that that makes you like have a special connection that is different than everybody else, right? I love that unique thing, which is just like you and I share something that everyone else would think is extremely bizarre, but we're like really into it. And this is what the internet is amazing for. And as far as I'm concerned, is what the internet is invented for, is connecting people who have weird, quirky interests to each other in a way that would never have been possible before that. And there was just that feeling in the early days of like it's less of a commercial transaction and more like a connection of a shared enthusiasm and interest that both of us are aware everyone else would think is completely ridiculous, right? But when there's this whole sort of community and commercial ecosystem around it, it doesn't exactly feel that same way. And I think that's the thing that I'm most nostalgic for. But that is not unique to the keyboard world. It's true of just the internet in general and internet culture. In the early days, it was all about very nerdy people connecting over their shared interests, and was pretty anonymous in those early days of the internet in general. But as the keyboard community has followed that as well, right? People would just be a handle on the internet, and so it was less about self-consciously cultivating an identity for the internet as a whole or a community that it felt like was watching, but it's just about connecting purely at the level of content, at the shared interests, and then almost not knowing anything about each other. Like you probably didn't know the guy was in high school until you met him, right? And he brought the keyboard, right? He was just a handle on the internet. And therefore the bond was about your shared interest, right? But as online communities become mature and people figure out how to, exploit them for commercial gain and otherwise, there are incentives. It's not a bad thing for people to take advantage of this, but there are just natural incentives built into the system for people to cultivate an identity that is positive, right? And then you start to become like more self-conscious about yourself and how you present yourself online and all of that, and that carries a little bit of a psychic burden with it, I think, especially for those of you who are more in the public eye doing streaming and stuff like that. But it also just takes it away a little bit from the pure discussion of the stuff, the content, right? It's a thing I lament about the internet in general often.
Would you say it's necessary to gatekeep good things in some senses?
No.
Okay.
Again, so
'Cause I feel like the internet that you envisioned and want, is it even possible with like how much accessibility it has?
Well, I don't know that I'm saying that I envision or want anything. I'm just being nostalgic. There's so many things in life where I'm like, well, that's gone forever. It was good while it lasted, right? And this probably falls into that category. I'm not sure there's something it's something that can be unwound or you can put the toothpaste back in that tube. But gatekeeping, there's probably some adjacent concept to gatekeeping, I guess. But again, for me, gatekeeping implies some sort of moral stance. Like, you want to keep people out who are not like aesthetically up to your standards to retain the sense that you are superior, right? I think that's pretty much always bad, or at least it turns me off. Let's put it that way. It runs counter to my aesthetics. But I guess there is, I don't know, it's an interesting question. What is it that I don't like, I guess, about this feeling? And I would say maybe it is the artist in me that is allergic to commerce or something, right? And the sense that there are a lot of people with commercial interests, like, a lot of, if you go to a keyboard meetup, there are a bunch of sponsors and brands, and there's like an appearance that there's like money at stake, and there are like a lot of people are therefore watching, right? Something about that, I mean, seems maybe hypocritical for someone who runs a keyboard brand and endeavors to do so successfully, but something about that. But I also I never sponsor anything also for similar reasons. Like I try to have us be kind of quiet and just cultivate sort of almost one-on-one relationships with people who resonate with what we're doing, rather than being too loud about the brand itself. So I guess, yeah, I don't know. I think I don't have an answer. I don't think you can solve it. It's just like it comes with the maturation of anything that starts out as a very small community and gets bigger. There are pluses and minuses that go with that. It's like it's been true for, I think, like for Apple, for example. There was a time when it was a very weird thing to love Macs, right? And I think I liked it better then than I like it now, where it's just like the default computing platform for everything. But do I want to go back to using an Apple IIe for my daily computer? No, absolutely not. I want a computer that does things, right? But I still have nostalgia for it. And I guess that's okay. Maybe one way of thinking about how to take something positive away from it is to remember, to try to bring that spirit and ethos of the early community into what you're doing now at the larger scale without having to make it be bad, right? So like we can have the keyboards be good. We can have them be better than they were 10 years ago. We'll take that. But at some level, maybe not be, and we certainly try to do this in Orbauer, not be too obsessed with scale, right? Just let it be a thing where you're making for a small group of people who care about what you're doing a lot and who are enthusiastic about it, and don't worry about operating at an enormous scale or becoming like a really big thing. Just do your thing, right? And that's okay, right? In the same way that you were pressured by that guy on your stream to like really worry about the numbers and like, are you really fully exploiting your scale and doing all the best? Like, just don't do that. Still have fun and do what you want. And either something will work commercially and it will slowly grow in scale, and that's fine, or not. But yeah, I think just not getting too infected with the obsession with doing everything big maybe is one way of doing it, which is, it's not gatekeeping exactly. It's just it's a kind of ethos or aesthetic that I try to embrace.
I think going back to when you messed with your first Cooler Master or you had your first Real Force, I think, going back to that time when you're like, I want to take this thing and change it, that was exciting. That's what's really fun. And I think that spirit is what will keep this hobby alive and into the future, because it is like, whether there's like tons of keycaps available, it doesn't really matter. It's like there's somebody that has an individual sense that really wants to make something their own. And I'm hoping that the more people that are aware of that you can get something in your hand, whether it's pre-built or not, that you can change the keycaps to, or you can change the switches to. The more people that know that, I'm feeling like the hobby will grow that way. Because I don't know if you guys have experience doing this, but I've gifted keyboards to other friends of mine, and I give it to them, and then I'm like, you could change the way it feels if you want. And they're like, it throws them off. They're so confused by that notion. But I always make sure I tell people that you can change the keycaps, you can change the way it feels, because that's really what the hobby is to me. It's about customization. It's about finding things that you love and then making them better, making them personal. So I'm hoping that more people will know that that's a possibility.
Yeah. So that's another interesting question, I guess. Maybe as we're sort of rounding out our discussion, is to think about, what do you guys care about or can be excited about in keyboards now? If you aren't completely burnt out, that's an acceptable answer if that's true. Are there things that you would love to see exist or excited about, or aspects of the contemporary community that you still are engaged with and are looking to see more interesting things out of?
Yeah, I mean, I know for a fact we're working on some cool sort of keyboard technical topics that we hope turn out to be fruitful. But I think one of the benefits from the hobby growing has been having actual designers and sort of engineers coming into the space to provide their input. Like there are some really nice looking keycaps that come out from professional designers who do designing for a living. So I'm definitely still excited on that front, but I do hope that more companies might start focusing more on sort of technical R&D that we haven't seen as much in the hobby. And I've talked to Preston about this too, but I wish we would also have more discussions on actually using the keyboard. Like, I think
that's really his expertise. Yeah.
Like our hobby currently is focused just more on consuming keyboards as a product, as an object, but there isn't a lot of discussion on actually using it, or how do we improve the art of typing. I don't know. I mean, typing is maybe too general, but like I wish there were other discussions other than just what are you buying? Why are you buying? Like actually using the keyboard for its intended purpose.
Yeah, we've been thinking about that a lot, specifically about the content that we put on this channel, actually, is because a lot of the people who've built content generation engines or something, to use a kind of ugly term, around keyboards have necessarily, because many of them have used it to make a living, have done the things that they can find sponsors for, right? And so that causes you to focus on making shopping guides for people, right? And so a lot of what sort of advertises itself as the official, instruments of keyboard culture online, YouTubers and streamers and stuff, are really just like kind of helping people find stuff to buy, because that's how they can make money from sponsorships and stuff like that. And as a result, but that's just like a small slice of what can be considered interesting about keyboards. And we kind of increasingly wanted to focus on that kind of stuff. And that certainly leads to a side interest of yours, Preston, is like you're interested in typing form, right? And speed and all of that. And have been involved. I've seen you do competitions at meetups and stuff like that. And you've also just like written thoughtfully about it on the internet. And you actually oddly don't see much of that type of discussion. It's
Very
like,
oddly.
yeah, how can you buy stuff and how can you build stuff, and less about what do you do with it once you've actually built it.
Well, I mean, typing is also dying as a
Well, that's
skill,
true.
I guess.
Yeah.
We gotta save it.
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed the tactile experience of using keyboards. That's a big part of what drew me in. And then like Ryan said, I've always felt like there are many large gaps in terms of things that are very integral to using a keyboard, such as spring weight, for example. The closest we get is sort of this not really a discussion of just people kind of being like, maybe more is just better. Like, you don't really often hear people pushing for lighter springs. It's like, oh, you like, I'm using 67 or whatever, or like get stronger fingers or something. And there's like there's no scientific like analysis or discussion about what might be optimal. How do the muscles in our fingers grow if they do? Like that kind of stuff. And I was going to contribute something that was kind of the opposite of what Nathan said. Like I very enjoyed the non-technical side of things, the kind of the shared subjectivity that Ryan said, the way that we get along with our stuff, how we use it, and kind of how different ways that we can use it might make us feel differently. I find that very interesting. I've given a few like speed typing workshops, and I really enjoyed that a lot. I just like, it's so interesting to see how different people will use the same product, or different people approach a certain problem, and to kind of brainstorm together, what options do we have? What kind of different approaches can we have? And I think keyboards themselves provide a great platform for that. There's so much customizability. It's inherently like fun. There is not a perfect like, what's the most optimal spring weight? Like it's not to do with technical performance. It's not to do with your words per minute that much. It's just kind of like preference. What does it feel like? And I feel like there's a lot of feely discussion that can be had that doesn't have clear answers. And that's what I really enjoy, because it's very about, well, what is your experience with it?
And I think that's also maybe slightly missing from this current generation of enthusiasts. Like if you go to a meetup, you ask someone, why did you put this? Oftentimes it's, oh, this reviewer liked it, or I saw this review and it seemed fine for me. Whereas in the early day meetups where it was much more smaller, people would have like long discussions on why they experimented with, this plate or this cutout or this spring weight. And I think we need enthusiasts to maybe actually start caring about what their preferences are and think about it, as opposed to, I just saw this YouTube. My favorite streamer likes it, so I built it and it's fine for me.
Yeah.
That's why keyboard meetups really existed in the first place. That was the original inception. It was too hard and annoying to get to try all the things that were there. And so people would bring their keyboards, put them out on a table, and you could just try other people's stuff.
Right.
It's sort of the meta of it, of a social activity, grew later. It was really just about getting access to the equipment initially.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah. How about you, Shin? What's your, have you reached your end game and you're done, or?
I want everybody to go to box white. I want box white to be the only switch out there. I have, in a weird way, yeah, I think I have a small army of keyboards that I feel like are my end game. What's interesting is I've sold a lot of keyboards that I wish I had back. So maybe I might spend the next few years just trying to get some of those back. But for the most part, I think another thing that might be missing in the future is innovation. Like I remember when gaskets came out and everyone was like, oh, this is so cool. There's gasket mounts. And then I would look back and be like, wait, hold on. OTD did gaskets way back in the day. And it's like, there was nothing new about it. And, I just feel like there's this one thing that's missing that is going to push this, at least the customizable part of this hobby into the future. And I'm hoping that some smart designer out there will figure it out.
That's my answer, honestly, of what I'm excited about in the future is just the stuff that Nathan talked about that we're working on. Yeah. That's what keeps me interested. Like, I can make new powder coating colors or whatever, and that's fine. But if I'm not solving some interesting problem, I think I get bored pretty easily. Yeah. And, the Seneca and particularly the stabilizers on it were a very large problem that I focused on for a really long time, but now we've sort of more or less solved them. So now I have to find something else to be restless about. And we have a lot of those that I'm actually really excited about right now on the keyboard. And the question to me is like, how much can we push beyond where we are now in terms of the admittedly subjective optimization of what I think makes for a really nice typing experience. I think certainly compared to what I was doing before, which is, aftermarket Topper housings, I think we've achieved an order of magnitude increase with the Seneca, but I think there may be another order of magnitude that we can achieve with some of the cool ideas we're trying right now. And I just hope I never run out of those because then I'll be bored. And
between you guys, I don't think you'll ever run out of that.
We'll try. We'll keep at it. But, as one of the major themes and sort of memes in the hobby is that Endgame, obviously the concept is entirely illusory. And so it probably will not ever reach an end state. Maybe what happens once you reach a point of where you're very satisfied with one solution, that's where you start to branch out and offer things for people who have different subjective preferences, right? And how can you accommodate people who want unusual layouts or different switch weights and stuff and do that to a similar standard to the thing that answers, scratches your own itches. That'll probably keep me going for a little while longer, for sure.
I think clickies are due for their time. Like linears and tactiles, they've had their time, but clickies,
okay,
there's still a lot more
Let's
room
lead
for
the
innovation. Yeah.
Have you tried different ways of essentially meeting what you like about the switches that you prefer, the clickiness? Have you tried other things?
I've tried other clickies, yeah, but it's just for whatever reason, I don't know.
Blue
I
Alps?
have no idea.
Have you tried Blue Alps?
I like Blue Alps.
I love Blue
those
Alps
are
too.
nice. Yeah.
It's good.
That's probably my favorite non-capacitive switch.
Really?
Right now, actually, yeah, it wouldn't be an MX switch. Part of it, I think, is again, it comes back to this weird early computer nostalgia for me, and very few things like that Alps board you showed me, the Blue Alps board, trigger that. Like, oh, I'm 12 years old and I'm typing my first computer program.
The
like
switch
that.
is very over-engineered in a way.
Yeah,
and
and
then
it's
we
not
lost that sort of charm.
It's not shy.
Yeah.
Right. I like
There
that.
were
It's
a
got
lot
a lot
Alps
of parts.
builds at Keep Life 2 this year.
Yeah, I like that. It was
Still
basically an
around.
entire table.
Yeah.
There was a very friendly fellow who's going to build one for me, which I'm very excited about because I don't want to have to figure out how to do that.
I also have a ton of Alps stuff.
Okay, well, I can maybe steal some of your
Not
switches
that I
for
wanna
it.
build it, but-
Wait,
That's
did you
the
say
thing.
there's a lot of Alps boards?
At Keep Life this
Oh,
year.
no way.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I
there
mean,
was
still every meetup, there's at least a couple Alps and vintage.
Vintage
So,
is cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of trending back. Any other topics that you feel like we surprisingly don't have any literature for?
I'm interested in layouts as of late. I don't know if it's maybe I'm just sick of the standard layouts that we have.
Layout like QWERTY Dvorak or like layout like TKL?
Sorry, I guess form factor.
Form factor.
But form factor, yes, but also how they're arranged. Like, do we need to keep it a rectangle? Like, it'll most likely look ugly if we deviate from that, but I am curious. Like, maybe this might be an exercise for Ryan if we just disregard aesthetics and maximize.
I'm really good
for,
at disregarding aesthetics, so it's a bad starting
that might
place.
be a good
but-
challenge because that's a forte for you. But
Well, the interesting challenge, I mean, we never talked about this before, but I actually find that interesting, is how you could make something that is a little bit more functional and gets at the things that we care about, such as like, you know, a compact space with the maximum amount of input efficiency, and have it not be ugly. That would actually be a really interesting design challenge that I would like to tackle. You know, so like the heavy 9 layout, the FC 980C and M boards. I forget what that's called. Like, I don't know.
It's a compact 1800.
Okay, compact
1800.
1800. Yeah. So it's for people who need a number pad. It's really amazing because it's just like the board is just ever so slightly wider than a TKL, but you get almost the full boards of worth of utility, 100%, and that's great. But I don't love it aesthetically, right? And whenever we remake that layout for the Seneca Switch platform, I will probably want to change the aesthetics of the housing. And I don't yet know exactly how to do that, but I think it's an interesting challenge, and maybe we could push that even more by giving more functionality and more compactness while still trying to keep it not hideous, right? I don't know. I'm definitely in favor of that. So let's brainstorm by all means.
Or even like switch spacing. Like, I don't know if that's something that's been researched. Maybe what we have is correct, but like, can we make it wider, for example? Have certain keys bigger and smaller?
Yeah, I mean,
It probably won't look pretty, but
We already have certain keys bigger and smaller.
I mean, like, even amongst the alphas, like maybe you make the more popular keys bigger. I don't know.
that's essentially what the iPhone keyboard does under the hood. Is it like somewhat? It's like the hit space for certain keys changes
noticed that.
based on what it thinks you're going to type next, and so effectively the keyboard, like the size of the letters, is always changing in an invisible way. Kind of interesting, but that's one of the nice things about now controlling our own Switch platform is we can do anything, and that's really why I wanted to do it in the first place. Is we can do wacky stuff to keep ourselves from getting bored, which is a good place to be.
This was just like one of those things that I was like, I want to say this, and then the rest of the conversation left for the past half hour. But one of the things I love about the keyboard hobby was meeting up in person to do local handoffs. I think more often than not, I ended up just having a conversation and or becoming like best friends. Shout out to Mally. With said people who I was just there to buy a PCB or a keyboard. And then you just can't help but be like, yo, what are you going to do with it? What are you building? And then it's like almost always like something you wouldn't have thought of. It's like, you're using what switches, or like, what's going on? When'd you join the group buy? And then you start talking about like, who'd you buy it from secondhand? And then it's just a fun, really nice environment. And it just fosters that kind of discussion and growth very organically.
Yeah, and the
I
next
always
level
love
of
that.
that also is like what they do for a living, you know, then you're like, oh wow, that's an interesting thing that I had never experienced. And it's you meet people, especially in this hobby, that again that I would never meet in my everyday life, and I really love that.
There's something inherently, I always describe keyboards as kind of like inherently non-competitive and almost kind of silly and absurd. You know, you can't really win if you have the coolest keyboard because you're just using it as an input method. It's a means to an end. It's a tool, you know? And so that kind of tempers the part of you that's like, oh, this is technically the best, like that you might get in watches or photography or something with that lends itself to that a lot more. And I like that, you know, keeps it non-elitist, relatively speaking.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well said.
That's one of the core metaphors of a keyboard as a device or object, really, is it's like it exists to connect human brains to other human brains over vast distances, right? And I think that it's nice that the keyboard community kind of echoes that in its real world manifestation, is that many of us, the reason we're all friends sitting here together is because we've been connected via this hobby and interest in a device whose purpose is to connect human beings, right? It's a very nice and satisfying kind of conceptual symmetry to the whole thing.
You know what I miss? I think packaging has gotten too nice. I sort of miss when the early day keyboards would just arrive all saran wrapped and just like,
With styrofoam.
yeah, you just kind of
like-
hack
yeah.
something together with tape. And knowing you received the suspect package, but inside there's this like beautiful housing. There was something magical about
I agree.
the
So much foam.
yeah, the contrast. But nowadays, like everything comes in like a nice, pretty package, so you expect something nice.
And it raises prices too.
Right,
in
right.
LA.
Just give me the
Yeah,
give me the
just give me the
styrofoam
board.
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm all for using shrink wrap and getting rid of our fancy packaging. That sounds great to me. It kind of doesn't totally echo the brand vibe we're going for, but maybe we can make a nostalgia edition where everything is just kind of garbage like it would have been in the old.
Ooh, I like that. Make them pay more. They would like that too.
As long as you can sign up via Google form, we know we will have hit the theme correctly. Guys, well, thank you for reminiscing with me today. And
Thank
Thanks
you,
for setting
Preston
this
and
up.
Shin, for joining.
Yeah.
Oh, it was great
Thanks for
fun.
having us.
We've never all been together sitting around. Actually, you guys have never even met in person, right? Even though
Never.
you've done some
Yeah.
trades and stuff. So it's been really nice to sit down and talk in person.